Not too much. How you doing, Mike?
Everything's good. A good day of practice up there. I know the Eagles getting ready for this game, and a lot of people still asking questions. Let's start off with the big question here. Has the question been answered about Sam Bradford? Will he play in the game on Sunday? Did we have that answer yet?
We still don't know definitively yet whether or not he will play. I would expect him to at least give a series or two just to get his feet wet. But, you know, the typical would say maybe a full quarter for the normal starter in the first preseason game at most. I don't think he's going to get that much if he does play. So we'll try to get that answer, I guess, as we get a little closer to Sunday.
Scott, obviously, a lot of people kind of opinionating right now that he has worked a wide gap between him and Mark Sanchez. Do you feel the same way, that Bradford has widened the gap if there was any battle there?
Yeah, I do. Out of what I've seen at camp so far, Bradford, the ball just gets there faster than it does for Sanchez. It's so much more accurate a lot more of the time. And in talking to Jordan Matthews after practice today, I mean, Matthews was raving about Bradford in terms of, he's like, he said the story he told, like, if you go down and you think you run one play and you go, I know this isn't coming to me, you better be looking, because it's very well made. Bradford likes to try to throw the ball around, and he's been fitting it, from what I saw today, in some tight windows at times. His accuracy is very impressive, equally impressive. I would say the velocity with which he throws the ball. And, you know, Mark Sanchez is still just not connecting on some of those deep balls. And that's, you know, those, when they're there, they have to be made. And Bradford's making them, he's not.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people thought that Sanchez looked considerably stronger because, you know, he's coming off shoulder labrum surgery 2 years ago, and now in the second year of coming back from that. I mean, you saw him last year. Does he look like a better quarterback than he was last year, Sanchez?
You know, yeah, I think he looks more comfortable, and that can obviously go a long way sometimes for some players. And you know, we talked about the gap between Bradford and Sanchez. I'd say there's just equally almost as much of a gap between Sanchez and Tebow and Barkley, in whatever order you choose to view those last two. But, yeah, he looks more comfortable. His throws that are, I'd say, within 15 yards seem like they have more zip on them, a little more velocity for Sanchez. So those are things that I don't think he had, you know, in his pocket last year, to be able to throw those balls as hard or as accurately as I'm seeing him throw them now. His deep balls are the things he needs the most work on.
We're talking with Scott Grayson, 97.3 ESPN.com, covering the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, DeMarco Murray, you know, he's been an interesting story. He hasn't really been on the field all that much up there. Illnesses and DeMarco Murray, the offensive line. You know, how do you see those two guys meshing? Because it seemed like with Murray, he's a different style of runner than LaShawn McCoy is.
Yeah, Murray was a full participant today, so it was good to see him out there doing some of his stuff. And, you know, we've talked a lot about Ryan Matthews and DeMarco Murray, and so far, you know, granted, it's hard to tell sometimes in the drills they're doing without all the contact and putting the shoulders down, but I've been more impressed with Matthews than I have Murray. Granted, I haven't seen as much of Murray, but, you know, he certainly looks good out there. He looks like he'll be a good fit here. Matthews just seems to be a step ahead of him at this point, and that could be due to, as you mentioned, the amount of practices he's missed through the first week and a half here.
Scott, you know, Chip Kelly made the point last season, I think this was asked today to Pat Shurmur, that LaShawn McCoy came out of the game at certain times, maybe because of fatigue or he was getting tired, and that you haven't played the games yet with Murray and Matthews, you know, where they're both kind of fresh the whole way through. And did Pat Shurmur indicate how they're going to monitor that or split those carries up based on fatigue or keeping guys fresh?
You know, they're not. I don't think that they know for sure exactly what they want. Well, let's put it this way. I don't think they're sharing exactly what they want to do, because I don't think they want to tip off too many opponents. But, you know, it seems like they're going to do more of the, you take a series, then you take a series, and then, you know, maybe we'll let you take another series, and kind of keep them fresh that way is kind of the way it looks. And honestly, they were doing a drill today where it was predominantly, it was in the team, so it was 11 on 11, and it was predominantly running plays, and it was like 4 in a row to the same back. And I think part of that was to try to get their conditioning and their fatigue to be ready to do that when it comes time to play in the game. So I thought that was interesting to see them working on that with those guys at this point.
You wonder if they're monitoring Murray's reps and workload and how happy he's going to be. Here's a guy who, had a tremendous amount of touches last year. Is he going to be happy shuffling in and out of games?
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting thing, too. I mean, ultimately, look, if it allows him to stay in the league longer and prolong his longevity, obviously then he makes more money in the long run. And ultimately, it's the same thing as it goes for Chip with Sam Bradford and with anybody else and with all the moves he made. If they're winning, I don't think anybody's going to be complaining. But if they start losing, then there's going to be rumblings in the locker room. And, yes, and why am I not getting more carries? Possibly. But at this point, as far as not being used as much in practice, I mean, ultimately, I don't think he's going to care unless, as long as he's getting his carries in the game. If that starts changing, then that could be where you start seeing a little unrest. But at this point, everybody seems to be happy so far.
Scott, any updates or feeling on the right guard spot? I know John Moffitt got the reps there yesterday, and he got, some people – I don't want to say excited, but people raised their eyes when they saw Moffitt, who has been out of football. Is there any separation starting at right guard, or is that going to be really the story of these preseason games, watching right guard and figuring out? Because I only see on the offensive side of the ball that spot really being the only one up for grab, and obviously one of the wide receiver spots.
Yeah, as far as the offensive line goes, we've talked about this before, you and I, Mike, that Chip Kelly really puts a lot of stock in what happens in the games, and I think that's going to be the case for the offensive line for sure. It's hard to tell, how they're going to do as far as opening holes when they're not really doing much in the way of hitting here. So I think that's where the games are going to tell the coaching staff a lot by what they see on film as to who's doing what. But you got to like Moffitt. I mean, he's come out here, he's embraced his opportunity, he's taken it and grabbed it with both hands, and it seems like, from talking to other offensive linemen as well, that Moffitt is doing the work, and now it's just a matter of whether or not he'll do it on Sunday and in the preseason games to possibly earn that starting spot.
Scott, you talked with Byron Maxwell today, and he's coming over here with a lot of money and a lot of expectations. What kind of vibe do you get from him?
Another confident guy. He seems very happy to be here. I was asking him about the bump and run and the press coverage. And he's like, that's what I do. That's because I was watching him a lot in practice today, and he certainly does try to do a lot of that. And then I asked him about having Malcolm Jenkins and Walter Thurman behind him and what that does for confidence to know that there's capable guys behind you to help out if you do get beat. And he just kind of went on and said that that's exactly what he wanted to look for, and what he's happy he found here is the opportunity to be aggressive and do what he does by jamming the line of scrimmage with the receivers. I think we're going to see him go a lot of one-on-one and with occasional safety help, and he seems very happy to try to go out there and do his thing. Very impressed by talking to him. I liked what I saw with him on the field today. Nelson Aguilar one time did burn him pretty good on a route, and that kind of made me open my eyes more at the rookie than it did as far as Maxwell doing anything wrong.
Scott Grayson with us, 97.3 ESPN.com. Jordan Matthews, I know you mentioned him at the top, but you also got a chance to talk to him today. He's been working a lot in the slot. Is he okay with that?
Yeah, he's a guy. Look, man, you talk about culture in the locker room. Jordan Matthews is the kind of guy that if you could clone him and make 53 of them and put him on your team on Sunday, his attitude is just outstanding. I mean, I asked him a question about himself, just feeling more comfortable a year ago, where he is today versus a year ago when he was just starting out his first camp. And he's like, I don't really like talking about myself. I'm happy to talk about anybody else. And, he just loves the work ethic. And he's been real impressed by Nelson Aguilar. He seems to just be happy to do whatever the team wants him to do. Every time, every day of practice, he's one of the last guys to leave the field, because after they break, he goes over to the jugs machine and does all kinds of different catches there to keep working on his hands. You got to love the work ethic. You got to love the mentality. You got to love the way he goes out and tries to do what he can do on the field. And honestly, it looks to me like they're moving him around a lot more, that he may start in the slot, but through putting him in motion or whatever route he runs, he ends up on the outside. So I think they're trying to find a way to use him all over the field, not just make him the quote-unquote slot guy.
Finally, Riley Cooper. I know he seems to be the guy that everybody's waiting to see the end of his tenure here. He's kind of, started a lot with obviously the thing 3 years ago. It's come back up again this year with all the Chip Kelly stuff. But will he be a guy who is more of the 2013 Cooper, or do we see him kind of not being a big part of the offense, much like he was last year?
I've been moderately impressed with Cooper this year in camp versus last year. Now, last year I know he's trying to deal with the sore foot. His timing seems better. His route running seems more precise. He just seems to be doing everything a little better than he did a year ago. Now, whether that translates into Sundays and making the plays on the field then, that'll remain to be seen. But, he talked today a lot about being a guy who has seen a lot of quarterbacks come through here. Very complimentary of all four of the quarterbacks here. Obviously, he played with Tim Tebow in college, so he was talking about him. And then as far as he goes, he said, look, I know that I'm starting to get to be the older guy. He's like, Miles Austin has more years than I do in the league. And, this is when you start feeling the pressure from the younger guys who are trying to push you out. He said, I'm doing my best to kind of make sure that doesn't happen. At the same time, he said he's, always willing to answer questions for the younger guys. Seems like he's kind of playing the game the right way right now as far as the politics go or being nice in the locker room and doing all that. He was a pleasure to talk to today, and I think he's just being a real good teammate so far. And like I said, I like what he's doing now versus what he was doing a year ago. It just seems like he has something to prove this year. It's kind of the best way to put it.
Good stuff, Scott. Obviously, check out 97.3 ESPN.com for Grayson's grades following the opener on Sunday against the Colts, and he'll break down who did well and who did not in their first attempt to impress this Sunday in a game you can hear on 97.3 ESPN. A couple linebackers out, just to note, DeMarco Ryans on the field, did not participate. No sign of Kiko Alonso either. We'll dive further into that coming up in the next hour. All right, Scott, good stuff, man.